Senator Siewart.
President, I rise tonight to contribute to the debate on the coronavirus economic response package Omnibus Bill 2020. This bill marks an important step in pushing forward the supports for Australians during this unprecedented crisis and covers many areas. Some of the measures in this bill that I want to specifically address are related to a lot of the payments that are now will be made available for Australians in a number of areas. The once-off payments of $750 to people receiving FTB-A and FTB-B, the age pension, DSP, wife pension, carer payment, bereavement allowance, widow B pension, widow allowance, parenting payment, youth allowance, Austudy, New Start, a sickness allowance, special benefit, partner payments, and those and the rest of the payments it covers. The first payment applies to people who receive the income support between the 12th of March 2020 and the 13th of April 2020 and will be made available on the 31st of March. Also this bill also covers, and what I want to speak about is also the second payment that applies to people who receive income support but aren't eligible for the coronavirus supplement and occurs on the 13th of July. The bill also provides for a coronavirus supplement of $550 per fortnight to new and existing recipients of the job seeker payment, some people on youth allowance, parenting payment, farm household allowance and special benefit payments. The $550 supplement will be available for an initial 6 months, and as we know from the bill now, the Minister is able to extend the supplement by a legislative instrument for a period not exceeding 3 months. Income support recipients are also exempt from the assets test, the liquid assets or waiting period, the ordinary waiting period, newly arrived residents waiting period and seasonal worker preclusion period. I strongly welcome the streamlined application process that removes the requirement for employment separation certificates and the need for job seekers to make an appointment with employment service providers before they can be paid. The Greens, as been articulated by my colleague, support this bill, but we are worried that it doesn't go far enough given the magnitude of this crisis, as myself and my colleagues are addressing in our contributions during this debate. I foreshadow now, I've got a second reader amendment which highlights the concerns of the people being left behind. We are facing an unprecedented crisis that will see hundreds of thousands of people lose their jobs. Our social safety net must be equipped and ready to support everyone in need of help. And we'll just add here that we're having to do massive repairs to our social safety net because over the years so many great big holes have been slashed right through our social safety net. I'd like specifically first to go to the $550 supplements and say that finally the government has listened to the community and all those living in poverty for so many years on New Start who have been crying out for years to an increase in New Start for years and years now. This substantial increase to New Start shows just how serious this crisis is, and I welcome the increase. For someone who's been campaigning for an increase in New Start, when I heard that it was going to be doubling, I've got to admit a tear came to my eye, that people will now get access to a payment that at least keeps them out of poverty. But it shouldn't have taken a crisis like this to show the compassion for those surviving on New Start. Of course, we need a long-term and permanent increase to New Start. The supplements announced are time limited to 6 months, with the potential, if the crisis continues, to be renewed. But the government simply cannot drop. After this crisis is over, it's unconscionable to drop people that are still on job seeker payment back to $40 a day. So we need to, in this country, make sure we put in place a permanent increase to New Start. And I, for one, commit absolutely, to keep campaigning for that. A lot of people are now saying it is time for the nation to consider a universal basic income. It is times like these that highlight the absolute need for these sorts of protections, and I think that's going to be a live, ongoing debate. I'm deeply disappointed that a number of key groups of people are missing out on the coronavirus supplement because apparently the government doesn't think these people will be hurt by the health crisis and economic downturn. Students are working and will be some of the first to lose their jobs as casuals and workers in the gig economy. This is going to encourage students, I'm deeply concerned, to drop out of their studies, hurting both their studies and the universities on TAFEs they are attending. Why should disabled people on DSP and carers on carer payment miss out on this payment, particularly disabled people who are out of work? How can they be treated, and why should they be treated differently to those on the job seeker payment? One of my colleagues received an email from a constituent over the weekend, and this person is on DSP and is immunocompromised. They work part-time at a supermarket. They shouldn't be working during the coronavirus crisis, but they don't have a choice. People on DSP must get the coronavirus supplement to ensure that they are not being put at risk. I'm also concerned about aged pensioners, particularly those that are paying rent and get Commonwealth rent assistance. We all know that's inadequate, and they will be particularly hurt during this crisis. We need to make sure that those that are on the age pension that are renting and are highly likely to be living in poverty also have access to the supplement. That's why I'll be moving amendments to extend the supplement to youth allowance students, AUS-study, AB-study, DSP, the carer payment and age pensioners receiving Commonwealth rent assistance. This uncertainty over whether they should get it has to end now. Not if the government decides out of their goodness of their heart to use the provisions in the bill to extend them to those payments. Uncertainty needs to be cleared up right now. We are in a great time of uncertainty right now, and any uncertainty over payment, over potential access to resources, if it can be addressed, needs to be addressed, which is why I'm moving the amendments that I'll be moving in Committee of the Whole. We also strongly support the two one-off economic support payments going out to a wide range of social security income support, people that receive income support, veterans and the concession card holders. This will provide target assistance to those struggling through the crisis. However, I'm extremely disappointed, and again we'll be moving an amendment, that those that are holding the low income, I say again, the low income healthcare cards, who by their very definition of the description of the card are on low incomes, are not able to access and won't be receiving those payments. It's illogical. It is also unfair that families who are raising children and receiving FTB Part A won't receive an any additional relief to help those children and support those children during this particular time, which is why I'm also moving an amendment to ensure that families with children get access or get a payment for the children through the supplement. I'm also deeply concerned that the supplement is being tied to the cashless debit card, and those that are trying to survive on a cashless debit card will in fact have their payment, 100% of the payment, onto the card. We think this is unfair, and it's particularly then extending the punitive approach that government takes on the cashless debit card. People on the cashless debit card should be able to use the $750 payment in their normal bank account, so they can take advantage of cheaper food at markets, if the markets are still there, but in other ways that are safe ways to be able to buy second-hand goods, for example. But importantly, for those that are surviving on the cashless debit card with limited cash, if they aren't able to access the second-hand economy like they usually do, will in fact have more expenses. The fact that the government still thinks it's okay to run and to make sure and enforce mutual obligations is nonsensical. I've had a number of phone calls into my office about this. I've had lots of social media inquiries and comments as well. The government has improved the flexibility, but for a start, it doesn't seem to be being applied by some job service provider as of late, because as of today, I've had people telling me that people are being required to fill in a form to see if they can get an exemption from turning up to job interviews at their job service provider, and it'll be up to the job service provider to determine whether they should come in or not. And people are still being required to come in to interviews in their job service provider. Also, a lot of people, believe it or not, don't have access at home to the internet. They don't have smartphones, they don't have computers, and in fact, they use them in libraries and other social places where they will no longer be able to attend. So to just say, go online, does not pass muster. Mutual obligations should be suspended. On the top of that, providers are not going to be able to deal with the massive number of people that are going on to job seeker allowance. Cut it now. You've already done the right thing finally on suspending CDP. Suspend mutual obligations for everybody and make sure that employment providers are able to act in a proactive, supportive way instead of a punitive way, instead of a compliance way. Get them supporting people to update their CVs, encourage them in more training, things like that, not through mutual obligations where people are forced to turn up, putting themselves and the workers in the job service providers at risk. Services Australia, I'm pleased to see, have the additional 5,000 staff. I'll be asking questions about how they're to be onboarded, what they will be doing. But a serious question remains. Is the government still pursuing robo-debts and repayment of debts? Because I've had contact for someone as late as Friday who had been contacted by Centrelink about repaying a debt. I want to know how many Centrelink staff are currently pursuing debts, illegal robo-debts, by the way, illegal robo-debts. How many are still pursuing those debts? How many are reviewing the debts when they actually should be? All those debts should be cancelled, and those workers should be looking after the Australians who are currently at risk and need the support through the crisis we are facing. We've already seen the meltdown that occurred today, misattributed to a cyber attack, when the fact is it looks like the system could only deal with the 55,000 people that were trying to access it. And we saw the police called to a Centrelink in Sydney, I'm told. Those staff should be working to make sure that these payments are delivered. There's a number of communities that are specific risks through the coronavirus. They're particularly vulnerable. And I'm very pleased to see the measures that are being put in place to make sure, for example, that coronavirus is kept out. It is really, really imperative that that coronavirus is kept out of remote First Nations communities. But there are many things that still need to be done to support First Nations peoples, to ensure, for example, that people with an NDIS plan, that if there's extra costs, they are met for those people, to make sure we're meeting the needs of disabled people who will have further costs beyond what some other people will have. It's also really important that we're looking after the mental health of Australians, both those that already have poor mental health, but ensuring that we keep good mental health for those as they go into isolation. I hope that the government will seriously consider and support our amendments. I'm also pleased to see not-for-profits can access the stimulus package. Now, they were left out before. We'll continue to monitor that situation. And finally, I'd like to say, for everybody, we're all going to be staying at home more and we're not going to be seeing many of our loved ones. Save up your hugs for when this crisis is past and we can hug our loved ones and our friends and family.